Now that might surprise you, but I do have my reasonings. Sensible transfer idea for Manchester United, and God knows they need them. Now I'm not a United supporter, but I do have a little soft spot for them, and seeing their demise, especially recently, has been quite shocking, to be honest. I think in the remaining hours of the transfer window, the main thing that they need to get, ideally, is obviously a goalkeeper, but also a centre midfielder to partner Fernandes in there. So let's see who they can bring in. So I'm trying to not go absolutely obvious, because realistically, looking at who United have actually been interested in recent history, and also who is performing very well, all this was last season, you would go with Frankie de Jong. He's right up there, one of the best midfielders according to this algorithm. However, obviously, it's quite costly. Featured quite a lot for Barcelona last season. Recently, this week, he was actually the captain for Barcelona. So realistically, it's going to cost you a lot of money to get him away. So the guy that we're going with for this video, and who I believe will be a nice and smart addition, is a bit of a blast from the past, Corentin Tolisso. Obviously, started off at Lyon, then went to Bayern Munich and played quite well at the start. Obviously, featured when the World Cup with France. So the reasoning for that is I think that he's an all-round midfielder. Obviously, we're going to see here, I think what United need realistically in that midfield too with Fernandes, someone that's quite steady, but also because you've only got those two midfielders, you still got to have someone that can do a little bit of everything. You can't really have just a ball-winning midfielder or an advanced playmaker, because Fernandes is someone that likes to get forward. You need that kind of solidity to partner with him. But also, like I said, you still need that attacking emphasis, because with the midfield too, you need him to be quite mobile and quite good on the ball, because it's not someone that can just sit in front of the defence and not really venture forward. Because actually, if we look at the tactical roles and look at ball and midfielders, there we go. You'll notice Casemiro is actually number 2. So that obviously, Casemiro spent so many years at Madrid basically doing that, sitting in front of the defence, mopping up. Did an excellent job, and even his stats from last season with Manchester United suggest that he's still a really, really good ball-winning midfielder. But that's not necessarily what United need at this stage and in that position. So going back, all these tactical roles we look at, the one they really need is central midfielder, which is essentially someone that can do a little bit of everything. And Corentin Tolisso ranks 15th out of 334 players. So all these players here in the database, they're all players in the top 5 leagues in Europe that have played over 1,000 minutes last season. So Tolizzo's coming at 15th there. And one thing that really stands out with him as well, obviously good value for money. I think he's valued at about 12 million euros at the moment. And also he's actually one of the most well-rounded and especially one of the most reliable. So what that means is well-rounded means he's quite high up in a lot of the different data points. And most reliable means that he isn't, he very rarely features in the bottom 20%, bottom 10%, bottom 25%, and bottom 50%. So comparing him with United's other options, we've got Casemiro comes in here at 51st, which isn't bad. However, the thing with Casemiro is he really likes mobility, which obviously I think everyone that's watched United over these years, they know that that's something that they need. And then to find a Ugarte, we need to go all the way down here. So he ranks 212th in the league, so really low down. And also, Kobe Mainu is also fairly far down this list series here at number 229th, which is probably lower than most would expect. Obviously, he's still a young player with got a high ceiling, obviously. So going across here, obviously defensive duels 1 per 90. Ugarte and Casemiro are both high on that. That's actually Ugarte's best attributes amongst all these. But Tolisso still doesn't rank too badly on that. Obviously ranks highest and finished off here out of all 3 of them. When it comes to defensive duels 1 per 90, he's still in the top 50 percentile here with 3.84. But where Tolisso really comes into play here is air duels 1 per 90. He's still here just outside the top 10%. Interceptions, again, still just outside the top 10%. So not the same level as Casemiro. But as you'll see in a second, Tolisso has a lot more to his game than Casemiro does. So non-penalty goals per 90, it ranks here comfortably in the top 10 percentile. And actually, if we have a look at his stats in particular, he ranks as one of the best, actually, in terms of goals scored. So yes, he's scored 7 goals last season in Ligue 1 for Lyon. 12 is obviously the maximum, and he ranks 7th out of 334. So a guy that's got an eye for goal. Shots on target per 90, very high as well. Obviously, McTominay there at the top. He's a real box-to-box midfielder. Shots on target percentage-wise at the top. So, expected assists. So he's someone that really is also, he can cover defensively, but also involve going forward. And he's a player that, over the course of his career has had a lot of different tactical roles and different setups, so someone that's quite very experienced as well. But let's dive a little bit deeper and compare them a bit more. So here, looking at performance to value, obviously Tolisso, we can see here he's only a little bit above the median in terms of value, but in terms of his output and performance, he's way above the average all the way up here in the 80s mark. And you can see, obviously, compared to United's other midfielders, Casemiro, he is still above the 50th percentile mark in terms of performance. However, not as high as Tolisso, and obviously costing a little bit more as well. But the main kind of culprits really here that stand out are both Ugarte and Minor, who really the highest players in terms of value that fall below the average performance mark. So here, looking at this radar chart, you can see that Tolisso's all-round game is stronger than both Casemiro's and Ugarte's. Casemiro is very strong in ground defence, which is something that is obviously a big highlight in his game. Obviously, real defence as well is superior than both Tolisso and Ugarte. But Tolisso, you can see, is more offensive than those two, which will be able to complement Fernandes well in terms of still providing that solidity with backup in terms of his defensive capabilities, which is still above the median in the top 5 leagues, both in ground defence and aerial defence. But we also provide a bit more attacking threat, obviously more class in terms of finishing, more creativity, and also a better passing range, which is something that obviously United will need playing with the midfield too. And then when we actually look in the percentiles, attacking threat is actually one of the best in the top 5 leagues. So these graphs here in benchmark based on the best player. So it'll be based on the midfielder with the highest attacking threat, whereas this is essentially where they rank for these different attributes in the league. So attacking threat is way up there. Casemiro's as well, which we'll look at in a second. Obviously finishing is way up there, creativity is way up there, and like we said before, ground defence, aerial defence is still way above the median. So here, if we're comparing Tolisso with Ugarte, he wasn't at the best start to his Manchester United career. Tolisso obviously, getting on now a little bit, 31, still probably got 2 years at the highest level left in him. Obviously, like I said, last season, he actually played 32 games, which obviously in Ligue 1, with there only being 18 teams now, you don't actually really play as many games, only 34. So played in nearly all the games. Obviously, Ugarte played in a fair amount as well. Market value to least about 12 million euros, which with Lyon's financial situation at the moment, I don't think you would end up paying much more than that. I think, obviously they realistically need the money. That's why City obviously able to get Cherki from them for relatively cheap in today's current transfer market. Height-wise, both of them similar. Weight-wise, again, both of them more or less similar. More suited role, like we saw before. Tolisso, he's, quite a typical central midfielder, really. He's got multiple attributes. He can play different roles as well. Whereas Ugarte, even as a ball-winning midfielder, doesn't rank necessarily very high, but that is one of his, it is his most suited role. Tolisso, realistically beats Ugarte in almost all of the more important factors for United. So finishing, like I say, is above. Defensive duels, Ugarte is above per 90, but the success rate is more or less the same. But things like aerial duels, interceptions, Tolisso still comes high, and even defensive duels, 1 per 90 is still in the top 50% in the midfielders in the top 5 leagues. So it's not something that is a weakness in his game per se. And when you compare that with Ugarte, and when you look at the fact that with Tolisso, the amount of non-penalty goals scored, shots on target, expected assists, progressive carries, almost all of these stats going down here in terms of offense, he really, really outclasses Ugarte with key passes. Obviously, that's essentially chances created, shots, assists, second assists, smart passes, which are line-breaking passes, which, again, for United, the way they play is very important to try and find those wingers when they come into more of advanced playmaking position. So although Tolisso might not be the most exciting signing for a club the size of Manchester United, I do think it'd be a real sensible and smart recruit from them. At the end of the day, you're signing a 31-year-old experienced midfielder who's still got 2 years at the top level left in him. He's played for clubs like Lyon and Bayern Munich, where the pressure's high at both clubs, but in the Champions League, he's won the World Cup with France. And you get someone that can play multiple tactical roles as well, so you can replace both what Casemiro does in terms of being a ball-winning midfielder. And also, if you want to push Fernandes further up the pitch, which some people are crying out for, you can also provide that attacking emphasis as well. So someone that can cover both of those roles. Also, like I said, he's going to be there for 2 years, really, at the top level. You can get it for not that much money. Realistically, I think you'd be looking at about 15 million euros, which in today's market is nothing really. And that way also you don't really stop the progress of the likes of Ugarte, who's only 24, so he's still got some time left to develop in the Premier League and get used to it. And obviously also Kobe Mino, who there's talks about him going out on loan. Obviously you don't want to block his progress either by he signing that, in his prime or 26 years old, that's going to take that spot for years to come.